another set of notes for ancient world history. We are going to go ahead and start with the study of early man. And when we study early man, we are going to study the very beginnings of mankind. So to start out with that, I want to have you look at this map. Now this map is a little different than a world map you might normally see. Please take note that Africa, the continent of Africa, is on the left side of this map, and North and South America are on the right side. So on this map, we're going to take a look at where mankind first began and the path that they took as they spread out to the rest of the world. So we'll go one stage at a time. You can go ahead and see the time that we're working with down here on the bottom. These will each light up when we get to that point in time. So we start with about 100,000 to 200,000 years ago was the beginning of man, and that occurred in Eastern Africa. So man is believed to have begun in Eastern Africa, and they're going to start spreading over a large period of time, 50 to 100,000 years. They're going to start spreading into Asia, Australia, and Europe. So we see up here where we have our labels 100,000 years ago, into Europe 40,000 years ago, and 50,000 into Australia. Then we're going to continue on further, and you can see that mankind spreads into northeastern Asia, and then they're actually going to cross over into North America. Now this is possible thanks to what is known as a land bridge. This is where at this time in history, there was a lot of ice because it was during the last ice age. And because there was so much ice, a lot of the oceans were frozen. And so this frozen water kind of pulled the oceans up and allowed for land to exist between Asia and North America. And so that allowed individuals, early man, to cross over into North America. Man will then continue, early man will continue through North America, about 12,000 to about 5,000 years ago, and then continue on into South America. This is another representation, just all at once for you. Again, early man begins in Eastern Africa, and then spreads to Europe, Asia, and Australia, and then over into North and South America from there. This is a zoomed-in map for you on Eastern Africa. And again, this is where early man began. You can see down here we have a world map. There's a little box around where we're looking at in Africa. This is known as the Horn of Africa here. And so it's kind of a way to get a gauge on what we're looking at here. So how do we know what we know? How do we know about early man? How do we know about these movements? We know about them from three different sciences: archaeology, anthropology, and paleontology. We're going to take a look at what each of those three means, what they do. So the first is archaeology, which is the study of the past through the analysis of artifacts. What is an artifact? Well, an artifact is any of these things. An artifact are things that people leave behind. They can include tools and weapons. So this would be an example of a spear that's created maybe from a rock or from bone. Art and sculptures. This here is what's known as cave art. And we'll talk a little more about that moving forward. This is pottery. Pottery is created as we move into the Neolithic era, which we will talk about soon. Ancient buildings and monuments. This one specifically being an example of Stonehenge, which again we will talk about coming up. Human remains, so bones left from those who are from history who passed away, and jewelry. All of these are considered artifacts. So archaeologists study these artifacts to learn more about the people who created them or left them behind, and try and learn about their lives. Anthropology is a study of human life and culture. So this is more a focus on that culture aspect. So a cultural traits are things that people share, that are important to them, customs, family life, social relationships. Those are types of things that anthropologists study by looking at artifacts as well. And then we have paleontologists. Paleontology is the study of fossils to determine early life. So paleontology is specifically focusing on bones, fossils, and they have certain techniques that they use to try and figure out exactly how old a bone really is, to figure out how long it's been there. So how do you date bones? Well, it's not like regular dating, right? In today's world, by date, we're talking about a time in history. There's something called carbon dating that paleontologists use for dating bones that are really, really old. And we're talking thousands and hundreds of thousands of years old. So there's something called carbon-14 that is present in all living things. And as long as you are alive, that carbon-14 is being absorbed. Now, when a person dies, they're no longer absorbing that carbon-14, and so it starts to break down in the bones. Exactly 50% of that carbon-14 will no longer be in the bones after approximately 5,730 years. So a paleontologist would know that something is 5,730 years old because they will have exactly 50% of this carbon-14 left in the bones that they're studying. Now this continues again and again, so as things get older and older past this 5,730 years, these things will have even less carbon-14 in them, these bones. And so paleontologists are able to tell roughly how old a bone is that they're studying. This is a representation of that carbon-14. So living organisms absorb the same amount of carbon-14 that is constantly present in the atmosphere. After death, carbon-14 is no longer absorbed and gradually decays, which means breaks down. The ratio of remaining carbon-14 to carbon-12 can be used to calculate the age. So again, this is talking about things that are over 6,000 years old. Anything that is less than 6,000 years old would have to be dated a different way. Carbon dating is just for things